So, Michael, thanks for joining us again today. Really appreciate the opportunity to catch up with you.
Great to hear from you again, Brian. It's been a long time.
Yeah, so I know we've seen a lot of events in the news recently on attacks around RMM tools and other
Mhm.
tools that managed security services providers use. And I know being a managed security services provider, it's very near and dear to your business. What are some of the things that you're seeing trend wise around that?
Well, I think that everybody's talking about it, which probably isn't a bad thing because all of that talk brings about some additional awareness. Some of that talk always brings around some panic. I've got a lot of partners calling saying, we're firing Kaseya, we're firing SolarWinds, we're moving on. We can't deal with this anymore. And I think, unfortunately, it's just chasing the bus around the street. You'll end up back there because it's just the unfortunate inevitable at the moment. It is the right target that the hackers are going after. We just have to begin. The community's got to get smarter. We got to do a better job together.
The attackers really have built kind of the perfect formula there because they know if they can infiltrate that tool, they really have the keys to the kingdom for all of your customers.
Yeah, it's a
And
huge force multiplier.
well, and they've done it a couple different ways now, but how do you think we should be preparing to be able to really address this challenge? Because we really need to find a common sense approach to it. What are your thoughts on that?
But at least there's one or two things that come to mind quickly. You know, there is the way of deploying things that gets it done, and then there is the security first way of deploying it that it takes a little bit longer, but it does get done. I think as a community of MSPs and MSSPs, we have to start being a little bit more forceful with the manufacturers, the code writers, whatever you want to refer to them as, in this instance, the RMM tool, PSA providers. Hey, please don't give me if you do this, the product's going to work. I need the configuration that is security focused, security first. What do I need to do to make sure that I have done everything possible to minimize whatever attacks we can think of today, and maybe some of them that we haven't thought of, but this will help future-proof it a little bit. I think that's where it really has to get. And if the manufacturers don't have it or they haven't thought of it, is a community, if we continue to ask for it, and if more of us ask for it, then they will be forced to comply. And I think that's what we have to do. It's their tool they want to sell to us, and we have to get it in a way that is best for us and our customers.
That makes a lot of sense. The easiest way is not always the best way, right? But I think a lot of partners are already kind of behind the eight ball, and sometimes these things just get missed. But hopefully, if you go back around and even kind of revisit some of the things that you've already deployed, that could be a big help too, right?
For sure. It's not necessarily finding a new tool to secure something else, but look at your current investment and what can that current investment do with everything that you've already purchased, and maybe ratchet it up a notch or two. Take your deployment from 70% good to 80% good, or 80% good to 90% good, and that change, then you can go out and look for something different. Look for another technology that will potentially make it better. But make sure your current investment, you're utilizing it for everything that it has.
And I know you've been using Stellar and our platform for quite some time now.
Mm-hmm.
And the XDR kill chain, we're hoping, is something that's been helpful, along with the threat research that we do when these big events happen, to make sure that you can capture, all the techniques, tactics, and protocols when it does happen. Could you talk a little bit about your experience leveraging Stellar during some of these current events?
Sure. I mean, one of the things is that you get to such a scale and size that without a technology like Stellar, having the ability to get that additional threat research that you provide, having that XDR kill chain, we wouldn't be able to determine where the attack is or isn't. And so this is a huge advantage to my staff. It's a huge advantage to us as an organization, but more importantly, it's a huge advantage to our MSPs. Knowing that, it isn't just about our own threat research. It's about the threat research that we get from you. And you know what they say, two minds are better than one. And I know that mine slips on occasion, so I'm glad we've got the second one with you.
Yeah, I think it's really important that you don't ambulance chase when these things happen, but you take a really, proactive approach to understanding the situation. And
Yeah.
that's what I really appreciate about what our research team did. I know with the recent Kaseya example, they provided the TTPs within a day or so. And
Mm-hmm.
what really shocked me was how many command and control sites they captured. I think it was something like 1,200, even in just the first maybe 48 hours of that being publicly available. So um,
It
I
was
think
certainly
that,
a very large distributed attack.
yeah. And I think a lot of people think, well, hey, if we just fix this one particular problem that we think we have, that's going to solve the problem. But that's not generally the case, is it?
No, it's hackers might be lazy, but they are very crafty, and they are very good at sneaking around and hiding their tracks and doing it in ways that makes it incredibly difficult to track them to the one place that they're not.
Well, and that's why we, introduced incident management. And I think one of the key things there is we've been able to correlate things for a long time to help you make sense of what those crafty attackers are doing. But when you see a phishing attack and you see a ransomware attack and you see maybe a SQL dump execution, understanding that those things are related can probably help your SOC quite a bit, can't they?
Oh, for sure. Getting that contextual analysis that brings it all together, that makes it make sense. It's kind of going back to the days, well, when I was in the military. I was going to say when we were in the military, but they talk about classified information, and sometimes even taking one piece of information that's not classified and putting it with another piece and then putting it with another piece, you could turn those three pieces of information into something that's incredibly sensitive that then becomes classified in a way that each individual piece wasn't. And so what you guys are doing and bringing that additional data together and seeing it in one place, it certainly gives you a fuller picture of the sensitivity of the nature and what we're dealing with.
That's a really interesting perspective. I'd never thought of it that way.
Nobody keeps me around for my good looks, Brian.
Yeah. So what do you think is next for preparing for these next attacks? What are some of the best practices that you would recommend?
Goes back to the earlier comment. Stop accepting the norm of the configuration that's given to you. Go out there and do some research. Look and see. I mean, the simplest things, like look at 365, for instance. There is so much amazing information out there. You look at the CIS benchmarks around 365, and not just doing a next customers working and configured, but take those benchmarks, do a little bit more time in researching that configuration so that you're doing something different that isn't just operational, but is securely operational. I think that's it for me right now.
Okay.
Don't, and not to pick on Kaseya, but because it is the talk of the town right now, just because you're told to whitelist a directory doesn't mean you should. I don't think anybody believes that that's a good idea. So again, ask for the secure configuration. Don't ask for the configuration. Because if you ask for the configuration, their best practices, there's it is right there. Don't ask the manufacturer for their best practices. Ask them for the secure best practices.
That's a great advice. And I hope that our viewers take that to heart for sure.
I hope so as well.
Anything else we could potentially talk about while we've got you on recording?
Let's be a community of partners. Let's be a community in the sense of, I said this maybe last week or the week before. I think about what I saw my grandparents doing when the neighbor three houses down had an event. Three horses. Yeah, well, there's that too.
that long ago, huh, Michael?
It's been that long ago. But you saw that the neighbor several houses down had an event, a death in the family or something happened. And even if you didn't really know them, everybody on the street showed up. Everybody showed up to do whatever it was, to help with the kids, to help make meals, to help whatever it may be, to just make it a little bit better for one another. And I believe that's what we as MSPs and MSSPs need to do. We need to do a better job of coming together to support one another. And I did see a lot of that. There was a lot of great collaboration happening during this last event with Kaseya. You saw a lot of people volunteering time. You saw a lot of people putting out very fast information. I mean, Huntress did an amazing job of trying to help the community out there and being really supportive. I saw partners volunteering engineered times to go help support companies that all of their customers got encrypted. That's what we need to do a better job of. This isn't about, can I win this deal? Can I not win this deal? Can I beat out my competitor? Can I not beat out my competitor? We will win this fight when we decide to come together and do it right.
Well, and I think that's a really interesting, perspective, because everybody kind of feels like, hey, we're part of this group or we're part of that group. And I know there are some groups on Facebook and, other professional groups around MSSP, but there's not a big global group yet, right? And I think there's definitely a need for it, and a purpose and a charter that could be developed for it, especially around sharing intelligence on these different events, because they are so global now and they are so intricate. And hopefully, maybe with our threat intelligence platform, we could start to pull more even into the Stellar platform if we could figure out a way to, harness that, kind of almost crowdsource some of these things.
Right. Yep.
Because I know we've looked at that for creating things like parsers and connectors, which is, great to add data into the platform, but being able to crowdsource the threat intelligence could be a game changer.
It really could. And I think, and maybe that's how we look at this. Maybe MSPs stop being afraid of other MSPs as being their competitor, and they band together, and the MSSPs, we band together, and the manufacturers band together, so that in the moment of global response, because it's going to get bigger. And when we saw this, it was a $70 million ransom. I think, or at least as they had said it, the largest ransom that had ever been requested. Well, we had to bind together globally. This wasn't an attack on a country. This was an attack on a way of life. So I think we have to do it. I mean, we didn't win World War I by ourselves. We didn't win World War II by ourselves. We had to come together as a much larger, other than just, oh, I'm from the United States, or I'm from the UK, or I am from wherever. No, we were together as a fighting force that was going to win it together. And I think maybe the histories of the past should lead us to the success where we can get greater together in the future.
Well, that would be a much better future, I think, for all of us.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah. And I think it's so hard right now from an enforcement perspective to even hold the threat actors accountable. The more that we could bind together globally, probably the better we could defend ourselves against them.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we're going to hold them accountable from whatever country they may be launching their attack from, but at least we as a community can be prepared to defend and collaborate and come together. And then that way they won't get as much out of us. They will get very little out of us. And it's hard to beat the entire world when the world decides to stand up and fight you.
Very true.